Welcome to Sit, Stay, Read, the podcast for every wag, whinny, and whisker. I'm Kathleen Donnelly, award-winning author and retired canine handler. Each week, I chat with novelists about the bond we share with our furry friends and how they inspire stories. Grab a coffee, get cozy with your favorite pet. It's time to sit, stay, read. Well, today I am thrilled to welcome New York Times bestselling author Robert Dugoni to the show. Robert, thank you so much for coming on, and I really enjoy all of your books, but I'm looking forward to talking about this one, A Dead Draw, today.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I thought for any of my listeners who don't know about this series, I love your Tracy Crosswhite books. I picked up My Sister's Grave, the first book, and was immediately hooked by her. She's such a fascinating character who you really root for. Tell us more about Tracy and how she developed in her series.
Yes, Tracy sort of developed out of desperation, to be honest with you. Um,
Okay.
I had a legal thriller series going. The publisher did some things that made it pretty clear they weren't going to get behind the books, and I had to come up with something new. And so my agent said, find me something. And so I started looking at what was kind of selling. And, other than erotica, which I'm not going to write, police procedurals were pretty big. So I started looking at the police procedurals, and I didn't want to be out there trying to compete with Harry Bosch, Michael Connelly or Jack
Mhm.
Reacher or those, but there really wasn't a lot of female detectives at that point in time. This was back in 2012, and so I started looking at one of the characters from my David Sloan books. Tracy Crosswhite was actually in Murder One,
Oh,
and
she
I
was.
she
Okay.
was her and Kensington Rowe were two Seattle police officers that David Sloan was dealing with. And I said to my agent, hey, Kensington Rowe, I think could make a great series. And she said, what about Tracy Crosswhite? And the hesitancy was, I'm not a woman. Um, but I made the decision right then and there that I wasn't going to try to write from the perspective of a woman, that I would try to write from the perspective of a human being. And have sisters that are professionals. My mom was a professional. I work with a
Yeah,
lot of professional women, and there's not a lot of difference between us in terms of when you go
Mhm.
to work. Everybody's
Very
trying to do
true.
the same job and trying to do it well. And that's who Tracy is. She's someone who's trying to do her job. She's trying to do it well. She doesn't want to be thought of as a female homicide detective. She wants to be thought of as a homicide detective.
Yes.
And in the midst of all this, she has this background that she can't really escape, and that comes from losing her sister when her sister was 18 and Tracy was 22, and she has terrible guilt because she was supposed to watch out for her sister, and she didn't, and her sister disappeared and was never seen or heard from again. And so that's really how the series got started.
Yeah, and I love that. And I want to talk a little bit about probably some characters you don't usually answer questions about, but this is Sit, Stay, Read. So we talk about some of the animal characters.
Yeah.
And I love that as you brought Tracy and Dan together. So I guess a little spoiler alert if anyone's starting at the beginning. Tracy had a cat, Dan has these two Rhodesian Ridgebacks. And did that just kind of come about naturally, or was that something you thought about in developing the characters and showing something about each of them?
I have Rhodesian Ridgebacks.
Oh, you do? Oh,
I
I
do.
love
Yeah.
them.
I've
Cool.
had I've had Rhodesian Ridgebacks for 20 years plus. We started with
Okay.
Nick. I was not a dog person growing up. I'm one of 10 kids. My mom
Okay.
didn't have time
Wow.
for us to have a dog. We did eventually have a dog, Kelly. Um, we did eventually have a dog named Kelly, and she was very close to my sister Bonnie. But for
Okay.
the rest of us, we didn't grow up that way. Now, my mom, on the other hand, I mean, my daughter's trying to call me here. My wife, on the other hand,
Mhm.
was always had dogs, always had
Okay.
animals, always had pets. And so she really introduced me to animals.
Okay.
We had Nick, a Rhodesian Ridgeback, before we had our first child. And I wasn't great with Nick, and I say that with all honesty. But
Yeah.
I understand it. I didn't understand. A dog to me was a dog. It wasn't,
Mhm.
a member of the family.
Yeah.
And I have great regret that I didn't treat Nick better. When Nick got old and he got feeble, I realized that this was a living thing. And
Yeah.
just like a human being gets old, Nick got old. And so I was much better to Nick later in his life when I was had to take care of him. But I had tremendous guilt about it. And I think I passed
Yeah.
some of that guilt on to the guilt that Tracy feels a little bit. I knew what
Okay.
that felt like. So that when we then got Bo, who was about 120 pounds, 130 pounds,
Wow. Yeah.
um, I really love Bo. I can say Bo genuinely became a part of the family. And ever since then, we've had Maddie, and we've had a couple of strays that we've picked up that aren't
Nice.
Rhodesians, but that needed a home. Bluey, and then Clyde now, little guys. And
Oh.
I've come to realize just they're as much a part of the family as my kids.
Mhm.
Um, and so in some respects, they're always with me. Your kids get older. You
Yeah.
have them between the ages of 0 and about 18, and then they're gone. The dogs don't live much longer than that, but it's sure nice to come home to a house with pets.
It definitely is. They really add to our lives and they add to stories. I think that's what I felt like when I read your books, they're a family, Tracy's police department family and then her real her husband and now daughter, but the animals felt that way too. I really love that. So tell us a little bit more about A Dead Draw and your inspiration behind it, because it hooked me from the beginning. That first chapter, I was like, whoa, we're seeing Tracy in a little different light.
Yeah, I always wanted to get her back. I always wanted to get her back to shooting. Shooting is sort of how the book starts out. She's a single action shooting kid, grows up kid. She competes. She's very good at it. Never quite as good as her sister, who she starts to learn some things about. So I always wanted to kind of get her back to that. And I thought to myself, could I do it in a way that was organic?
Mhm.
And sort of what I came up with really germinated when I used to watch movies with my dad. My dad used to watch all the spaghetti westerns,
Okay.
and he watched all the old movies, and he'd always say, "Bob, have you seen this one?" And I watched, On the Waterfront and Trapeze, and all those famous the Clint Eastwood movies, A Fistful of Dollars, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I used to watch all those with my dad. So it was sort of a little bit of a homage to my dad, that I went back to this idea of a shootout,
Yeah.
an old-fashioned shootout. And then the question became, how do I do it in a way that's organic? And I thought you'd have to have somebody that has a big ego who wants to see how good she really is. And that's what happens is she runs into Eric Schmidt. And Eric Schmidt knows her background, knows her history because he knew Edmund House,
Yeah.
the antagonist that killed her sister. And he was in prison with him. And Schmidt has a vendetta he wants to play. And this is his opportunity to play it. And he's just got to get her alone. And that's where the whole idea came from.
I love it. I love it. I couldn't put it down. And one of the interesting things I found too in the book is you have the character Lydia, and she's on the spectrum. And I thought you wrote that so beautifully. And I thought it almost gave Tracy her sister, I don't want to say back, you can never have someone back, but it gave her another little sister figure and someone to help her through
Very
this.
much so. I mean, very, very much so. Um, Lydia is 19 years old, and Tracy's sister, Sarah, will always be perpetually 19 years old because
Yeah.
that's when she lost her. Lydia is, blonde and blue-eyed like Tracy and Sarah was, and she's a phenomenal shooter like Sarah was.
Mhm.
And Tracy starts to see in Lydia some similarities to her own sister, and it
Yeah.
makes her wonder, um, whether or not maybe her sister was on the spectrum and she was just too young and it was too early in the decades to be diagnosed. And part of that came from my own experience, going to school with a young man who was always a little bit different. And 48 years after we graduated from grammar school, he reached out to me and said he was going to be in my area and could we sit down and have a cup of coffee? And I said yes. And
Cool.
he walked in the coffee shop, and within about 2 or 3 minutes, I realized he's on a spectrum. Oh my God,
Okay.
that's why he was always a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so, for Tracy, it's nostalgic. And Lydia is a breath of fresh air. She's different, but she's kind, and she's a little naive. She's a little bit,
Hmm.
somebody that you want to take care of. But at the same time, she's an adult, and she's trying to be an adult. She's trying to break away. She realizes, it's time for her to get her own independence, and that's what Tracy begins to see that she never got to do for her sister.
Yeah, I love that. And I hope I hope this is a character that might come back. I hope Lydia maybe will make some more appearances in future books.
Yeah, I
So,
just turned in Tracy 13. It's called One Split
oh,
Second,
cool.
and at the end of I won't give too much away, but yeah, I think Lydia is going to have a place in Tracy's life
Nice.
going forward.
That's great. I just love that. And I don't want to give too many spoilers either, but back to Rex and Sherlock, the Rhodesian Ridgebacks, they played a little bigger role in this book, and I loved what you did with it. When you started writing, did you know you wanted to have something like that? I know you're a bit more of an organic writer, so did it just
Yeah,
happen?
I never really know what's going to happen or how it's going to happen.
Okay.
Um, Rex and Sherlock have had roles in almost every book, and in a way
Yeah.
that a dog would, where a dog's trying to protect the people that the dog loves, and is being on guard and those kind of things. And I think that's the reason why readers get so upset when an animal gets injured. It's because animals are innocent.
Yeah.
They're only doing what's instinctual to them and what's right. And
Yeah.
so, normally if they're in an attack mode, or it's because they're trying to protect something. Now you have exceptions to the rule, and I
Yeah.
recognize that. But those are usually because humans have mistreated the animal or have trained
Hmm.
the animal improperly. Otherwise, the animal doesn't have any desire to go and attack
Yeah.
somebody. But if somebody has mistreated the animal or has trained the animal to do that, the animal is going to do it. But the animal is really innocent in all of it. So I just, I think there's going to be a time at some point where I'm going to have an opportunity to write a book where, the animals become even more important. They're that support system. They're that, when my wife travels and I come home, it's sure nice to come home to two dogs,
It is.
No one's getting in my front door who doesn't belong in my front door. As you
It
just
is true.
as you just heard when I had to take a break here to go tell people they could come in the house. That's what dogs are for.
Yeah, they are.
I
And
never
they're,
tell my dogs to be quiet. I never when someone's at the door and they're barking, I'll say, Maddie, good girl, good girl. Okay, good girl. You did your job. You did your
Mhm.
job. But I never tell them to stop because
Yeah,
they're doing what they are supposed to do. And I have
yeah,
had people come to the door who are a little sketchy and the dog's going crazy. And they'll say,
yeah.
does your dog bite? And I'll say, every dog bites.
Oh, I love
What
that.
what do you want? And then
Yeah,
if they can't give me a good answer, I'll say, goodbye. And they're not coming back. You know,
yeah,
they're not coming back.
yeah. Yeah. No, I love that too. I mean, they not only are best friends, but dogs will protect you. I mean, it's just amazing what they will do for us. So, and that really came through in the book. And it always has. Like you said, they've been a part of the series for a while. So I really love that. And the Rhodesian Ridgeback is an interesting breed. I'd love to hear more about the breed and what you found with them.
Yeah, my wife and I were watching, I think the movie was Out of Africa.
Hmm.
And it was about these two people, and they're sort of walking across Africa, and they had these dogs with them, and they were these gorgeous dogs. They're light brown, and they got kind of a mask, a muzzle, the black muzzle, and they have a ridge along their back. And we just were kind of fascinated with them. They're short-haired, which means they don't shed, which was sort of a positive in terms of
It's nice.
what we wanted in the house. Um, but we learned that they were used in South Africa to hunt lions. Now they didn't fight lions, but they hunted the lions, which means they're fearless. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly they're fearless. So we just started looking into them, and we found out that they were good with kids. They were good pets. They were good with kids, and um, we just thought, well, let's go see. Well, the only drawback was they're bred, and sometimes they're overbred, and that's
Okay.
difficult. And the other thing was, we just never felt like we wanted to go spend $2,000 on a dog when there's
Right.
so many other dogs that need a home. So, um, but we've gone to breeders, and it's actually pretty funny because I'll be looking around, and all the dogs will be there, and they'll be wearing a number on them, and this dog, Maddie, came up and I looked down and she was sitting at my foot.
Aw.
And I bent down and I started petting her and I said to the lady, well, what about this dog? Oh, that dog. That dog's got a deformed ridge and a bad teeth. I'm gonna have to just give that one away. And I'm like, oh, we'll take this dog.
I love it. She's yours.
She needs a home.
Yeah.
And we've done that. When we lost Bluey, we were looking for a companion for Maddie, and we were looking for a certain size dog, and this woman came over and there had been a puppy mill, and she brought over Clyde, and he had a sister named Bonnie, but Bonnie had been given away. Uh,
Aw.
but Clyde was small. He wasn't as big as Blue. And my wife, God love her, she's more of an animal lover than I am. But she was like, oh, I don't know if he's big. I said, honey, he needs a home, the poor guy.
Yeah.
That was it. And so we've had Clyde, and we've had to get a little bit used to Clyde. He's got kind of that Napoleon complex. He thinks he's as big as Maddie, but he's not. Uh, and he's a good little guy. He really is. And I really enjoy him. I'm probably more than anybody in the family. It's Clyde is probably my dog. And I think it's because I understand Clyde, you
That's
know.
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, it's been fun reading about them in the books, and I saw in your bio that some of the books have been optioned for television and film. So, is there any chance we're going to get to see Tracy and Dan and Rex and Sherlock, everyone?
Yeah, Tracy and Dan right now is over at Sony, and Sony is in the
Okay.
process of getting ready to go out, and so we'll
Oh,
see what happens. There's
fantastic.
a screenwriter involved, and she's got a lot of credits to her name. And this past week, I was on the phone a lot with production companies regarding the Kira Dugan series. So,
Okay.
you never know, and that's the thing is, a lot of people get really excited about it,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things that until it happens, it hasn't happened. And
Yeah.
I always respect the people that I'm working with, but I also know that they are subject to a lot of things going on in Hollywood. You probably just read in the paper they just created their first AI actor, and
Oh,
it's a
wow.
woman, and
Hmm.
they took a whole bunch of composite faces, and you would never in a million years guess that this was an
Wow.
AI generated thing. So that's something, when all these uh, guidelines go into place, when there's a legal challenge, and so these guidelines go into place, there's always going to be somebody that says, I'm going to skirt the guideline. It happened
Hmm.
with cloning, right?
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
over in Europe cloned a sheep. And that's apparently what happened is there was some company that said, well, we're not in the United States, we can do this. And so there's that going on. There was the writer
Hmm.
strike going on. There's a whole lot of things going on in Los Angeles, and I don't know where it's all going to settle or how it's going to settle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll just have to kind of wait and see.
Sounds good. Well, I hope any of your books make it to the big screen. The other one I would love to see, this was actually the first book of yours I read was The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell. That
Yeah,
was such like a life-changing read. It was so cool. So I was just curious. I've heard a lot of people say it was a life-changing read. Was that life-changing to write?
very much. Yeah, very
Yeah.
much so. I mean, I just got back from Syracuse, New York, where I was speaking to big library event, and I know the reason I was invited back there was because of the extraordinary life of Sam Howell. because the minute I mentioned it in my speech, 2,000 people just started applauding.
Nice.
They had read it. They had all read the
Hmm.
book, and it has that impact on people. Um, but it's also a different kind of story, and
It
it's not
is.
a story about religion. It's a story about faith.
Mhm.
And there are some people that have difficulties with that. And so, it's been through the Hollywood circuit a little bit, and
Okay.
nothing has really grabbed. It hasn't grabbed anyone yet. But I think it's one of those books that's just gonna I mean, it continues to sell. It's always one of my
Yeah.
top selling books. It's just gonna have to kind of wait and see. It's gonna take somebody that has some courage,
Yeah.
I think, to step up
I
and
think so.
say, people are going to love this. If we do this right, people are going to love this, because
Yeah.
that's what's happened with the book. Is it didn't come out of the gate like my thrillers. It came out of the gate more slowly, and it just kept
Yeah.
building and building, and it's all word of mouth,
Yeah.
and it's I think we've eclipsed 1 million book sales.
Wow.
So there's a
That's
lot of
awesome.
people reading it, and there's a lot of people who it's impacted.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved it. And it was a different book. So you actually write several different series. What's coming out next for you? Is it another Tracy book or?
So the next one coming out is the third book in the Kira Dugan series
Okay.
called Her Cold Justice. And that's the book that I've been in a lot of telephone conversations with this last, 8 week to 10 days.
Okay.
That'll be out in January. And
Okay.
then in May comes out One Split Second, which is the 13th Tracy Crosswhite book.
Okay.
And then I'm working on a book that will probably be more of a literary book, but also have a mystery aspect to it.
Nice.
I'm thinking about, and my editor um, is likes the idea of telling the story of how Kira Dugan's father became the Irish brawler, how he became,
Oh,
who he was.
yeah.
So there's just some things I got to kind of get figured out a little bit.
Mhm.
And that would be the next project that I'd probably sink my teeth into and write.
Okay. Oh, that sounds great. I would, especially I'm a little wee bit Irish myself, so I'd love to read that story.
Yeah, I mean,
That'd be fun.
I'm 50% Irish, and I've been to Ireland, 4 times,
Oh, wow.
and I love the country and I love the people. So, to dig into that a little bit would be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, you have so many great books to read. So if any listeners haven't read, they should definitely find you. What is the best way for readers to find your books, connect with you, all that good stuff?
My website is just robertdugonibooks.com. Also on Amazon, it's robertdugonibooks.com, I think. Is a great way to find me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on X. I don't do as much as I once did, but I'm on all those handles. But
Okay.
I think you go to my website, and then you can sign up for a newsletter. The newsletter does not spam people. I don't have time to spam people. It's basically,
Yeah.
hey, something's coming out. People have been
Yeah.
asking me about it. Here's the next Tracy book. It'll be out in September, that kind of a thing.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for visiting with me today. And I've really enjoyed learning more about Tracy and Rex and Sherlock. And everyone, if you haven't read it, it's a dead draw, but start at the beginning if you haven't read the series. Not that they don't stand alone, but it's just, I think it's more fun to read the whole series and check out your other books. Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I got to go take care of my dogs now.
It sounds good. Well, then, until next time, keep your tails wagging and pages turning. Thanks for joining me today. Sit, Stay, Read is a part of the Authors on the Air Global Network. If you enjoyed today's author interview, be sure to leave a review and share the episode with a fellow animal-loving reader. If you're curious about the world of working dogs and wilderness adventures, please check out my books at KathleenDonnelly.com. Until next time, curl up with your best furry friend and sit, stay, read.